Hey class, I hope things are going well. I hope you're finding the material interesting, challenging, and that you're learning a lot from it. Last week we looked at this, categorical statements. You were asked to take ordinary English and translate those sentences into one of these forms, A, E, I, or O statements. And then we were given arguments, simple arguments, one premise, one conclusion. We were told something like A is true, therefore I is true, or E is false, therefore I is true. And you were asked to evaluate if those inferences were valid or invalid. All right. Now this week, things get a little more complex, a little more interesting. We're going to be looking at arguments that contain three statements, two premises and a conclusion. That's a syllogism. A deductive argument with categorical statements wherein you have two premises and one conclusion. So, here's what you're going to be asked to do. You're going to be asked to translate ordinary English statements into categorical form, and you're going to be asked to identify the conclusion of an argument. Once you set forth the conclusion of an argument, you're going to be looking at the conclusion's S term, which is the term on the left here, and the conclusion's P term, which is the predicate term, the term on the right. Once you identify that, you're going to take the premise that has the S term and put it in second place. Here, that's the minor position, and take the premise with the P term and put it up in the major position. Note, this argument is not in standard form. You're going to have to take arguments that are not in standard form, like this one, and put it into standard form. Once you do that, you can figure out the mood and figure of the argument. You can read in Manji regarding what that means. Okay. The more difficult part of the material we're going to be dealing with at this point involves the Venn diagrams. Instead of two circles, we're going to be dealing with Venn diagrams that contain three circles. So how would you represent no P or M? Take a look at the diagram. You would shade regions 3 and 4. If this helps, use this as a strategy. Isolate the third circle that you're not dealing with when you're looking at only one premise, in this case, no P or M. Isolate the S term in this case. Ignore it. It'll make the work with the Venns easier for you. So here, this looks now like chapters 8 and 9, where you have no P or M shading basically regions 3 and 4. Note when you shade, you're going to be shading two regions. Here are some more examples as we enter the rabbit hole of logic. What does that represent? Take a guess. All right, this would represent no S or M or no MRS. Think about that. You can transpose the terms and get a logically equivalent statement. To say no cats or dogs is logically equivalent to saying that no dogs or cats. What would this represent? Again, that would represent no PRM or no MRP. Here's another example of shading with three circles in a Venn diagram. What would that represent? I hope you got it correctly. This would represent no SRM, or conversely, no MRS. All right, where things get difficult for people is when we represent the particular statements. Most people have difficulties with this part. Look at this diagram. What does that X represent? Think about that. Clearly, this X is inside the S circle. So this X represents an assertion about some S. It is saying that some S are not M, since this X is in the S circle and is outside of the M circle. So why is it on the arc of the P circle? It's on the arc of the P circle because we have only three options here for this X. It either goes here in region 6, or it goes here in region 5. If we put it here, that would represent that some S are not M, which is good, but it would also be saying that that X is not a P, which is incorrect. That would be misrepresenting the statement some S are not M. If we put it in here, we would be representing correctly that some S are not M, but no, we would also be saying that that S is a P. We want to say that some S are not M here, and only that. Nothing more, nothing less. So we're left with putting the X on the arc of the P circle. This represents some S are not M, and whether or not it is a P, we are suspending judgment. One more example. Take a look at this diagram. What would that represent? This would represent that some P are M, or conversely, that some M are P, and that we are suspending judgment about whether or not that X is an S. we suspend judgment regarding the relationship to S by putting the X on the arc of the S circle in this case. All right, one last thing. The reason why you always shade first if you have a particular and a universal statement as premises in a syllogism is that shading blocks off regions. So note, imagine our first premise was no SRM. We would shade, always do the universal premise first if you have a universal and a particular. We would shade no SRM. And then if we were told that some MRP, note, we cannot put it on the arc of the S circle because it's shaded out. To put an X right here on the arc of the S circle, when this part is shaded, would be to say that half of an X exists and half of it is in a non-existent realm, which wouldn't make sense. So notice shading blocks off regions. In this case, to represent some MRP, we're left with having to drop that X right here in region number 4. All right, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, you can send me an email and we can discuss any issues you have. Until next time.